Hello there, welcome to Cool Talk Talks and the 100 most influential people in history as per author Michael Hart. Today we discuss number 5, Confucius, the Chinese philosopher. And for people of the Western world, Confucius seems very alien to us, and some may wonder why is he so high on the list. Well, think about this. For 2,000 years, China has been the best governed region in the world, and it still reflects one of its best assets, the family unit. Countries like the United States and Western Europe seek individual rights, so they hark over and over about the Bill of Rights and independence and how the government should protect those rights and how we fought to defend our rights and our individuality, our identity, our way of life. In China, after adopting Confucian philosophy, it was different. It was a collective mentality where everyone strives and submits to the state while the state strives to assist its people. Does anybody in the Western world remember John F. Kennedy's words in his inaugural address?
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Very noble words. Beautiful. But without a collective mindset, it's hard for a nation to implement these thoughts into action. But what if everybody did? And this is what happened in China. Let's start with the two most important virtues, Zhen and Li. Zhen is a benevolent love for one's brother or sister or neighbor. It was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now this was half a millennium before Jesus. Now, Li is a combination of manners, rituals, customs, etiquette. Everybody follows a ritual on how to eat, sleep, dress, speak, greet, and so on. And once a few generations of this goes by, it's hard for the Chinese nature to think of themselves without thinking of the family, the people, the state. You might think this is a military way of thinking, but it's much more than that. It's collectivism. Remember the 1997 movie Titanic? For many East Asians, they were not moved by Jack and Rose who were trying to save themselves and their romance. No, they saw Jack and Rose as selfish. But many Chinese were moved to tears to see the musicians playing music, trying to keep the passengers calm, and later deciding to stay on the ship and die rather than save themselves. Here's a simple illustration of this. In basketball courts all across the Americas and Europe, young people go there. They go to the park to play basketball. They play with a bunch of strangers. They make teams. One team tends to win. The losing team gets off the court. Another team joins in. And they do this every single day, and there's never a fight. And you think about it as, why is it that the losing team doesn't refuse to leave the court? It's sort of an unspoken ritual that is kind of a code where no, that's just not what you do. Everybody thinking collectively for the greater good. We're all going to have fun. This is collectivism. Under Confucius, the children and the wife will submit to the father or the husband, and this man in turn will submit to the state. The state does not abuse this arrangement. The state looks out for its people. Government officials were selected by civil service examinations, which included Confucian classics. To be a public servant was a road to success, and there was lots of competitors. For 2,000 years, the civil administrators were run by officials that were very knowledgeable of this philosophy. This series of ideas and practices spread into the Chinese people, affecting their collective behavior and their thinking. Let's discuss Confucius, the man himself. He was born in 551 BCE in the small state of Lu in northeast China. Confucius lost his father at a very young age, and he grew up in poverty. As a young man, he served as a minor government official. He spent many years teaching and attracting many disciples to his studies, his philosophy. He did return to politics later on for about 4 years, but he had enemies, and they brought about his downfall, and he was exiled for a while. He continued to teach and returned to his home state. Confucius actually considered himself somewhat of a failure because he was ambitious. He wanted to be a high administrator within the state, and he never got that. But he did continue teaching, and he died in 479 BCE at the age of 72. Though many feel that Confucianism is a religion, Confucius himself never discussed the afterlife. He rarely spoke of deities. He focused on secular, personal, and political philosophy. He taught family loyalty and respect towards one's parents and elders. Now, as for worshiping one's ancestors, the Chinese used to practice this long before Confucius. He pretty much implemented what the Chinese were ready to accept. Speaking of the virtue of Li, which is following rituals for many things, even for getting dressed. If you look at these clothes right over here, I believe the collar is called a yorin, and you place it from left to right. That's how it goes. And there's a ritual on how to put these clothes on and how to dress. And many of us would say, just get on with it. Get your clothes on so we can just get out of here. But for the Chinese at the time, they saw these activities as respect. Even the most mundane activities had to be treated with a level of respect, and there was harmony in this. Now, look at this Chinese table right here. Under the Confucian philosophy, this would not happen. The way it works is this. The man sits at the head of the table, or you could say he sits at the table on the far end opposite of the entrance to the dining room. On his left and right would be his wife and oldest child. And all the other children sit around the table from old to young. So that little girl, I'm assuming she's the youngest one here, and that's his daughter, she would sit opposite the father. If it's a round table, as I said, you would sit at the far end. The head of the household would sit on the far end, facing the entrance of the dining room. When you serve yourself at the table, you don't take your chopsticks and dig in, trying to find the biggest chicken drumstick that you can find. No, that's disrespectful to the people around you. In fact, to show respect, you should pick out the biggest drumstick and give it to the person next to you. That is how it works. This is harmony. Now, when you are done with your meal, you take the chopsticks and lay it on the table next to the plate. You do not do this. You don't take a Chinese box of food and just leave your chopsticks sticking in there. It reminds them of funeral rituals where they have sticks sticking into incense boxes and so on and so forth. Now, among the Chinese for thousands of years, there's always been a respect, a veneration of the elderly. Confucius lived during the Zhou dynasty, but later, after his death during the Qin dynasty in 221 BCE, Emperor Shi Huangdi wanted to eradicate Confucianism. Books were burnt, the teachings were suppressed, but later on, under the Han dynasty in 206 BCE, it became the official state philosophy. As mentioned before, to work in the government, you had to pass state examinations. No longer do we have nepotism and cronyism. This was a system that China had for about 2,000 years. It worked for them. Now, under communist China for the last, 75, 77 years, they suppressed Confucianism again. They felt that Confucianism, with all the rituals and all of this, the Chinese Communist Party wanted to break with the past. And they felt that Confucianism is hanging on to the old and not accepting the new. They felt that Confucianism hindered progress. It kept everybody thinking the same way. Nobody thought out of the box. There was really little innovation. That is one negative aspect to Confucianism. Now, Confucius Institutes did surge and pop up all over the world, showing Chinese history and culture. Present Chinese leader Xi Jinping is now embracing Confucianism. There has been a resurgence of Confucianism in China. Across the world, however, for example, in the United States and United Kingdom and other places, there's been a backlash against the Confucius Institutes or anything that's Chinese. This is for political reasons. accusations of bioterrorism and unfair trade disputes. Yet, despite the backlashes that the Confucian philosophy has had in the last 100 years, think of this. The collective mentality that the East Asians have is due in large part to the practices of the Confucian philosophy. 1.4 billion people in the world are Chinese. This is not including a few other hundreds of millions of people in East Asia that have the collective mindset. There are 8 billion people on Earth. That means that over 17% of the world is Chinese. So the Confucian philosophy has had a tremendous influence on the world. And now for my next video, we're going to observe the Apostle Paul, the 6th most influential person in history. In the meantime, tell me what you think. Comment below, or better yet, subscribe. This is Cool Talk Talks.